Well, good morning. Today we're going to be in Exodus chapter 3. If you'll go ahead and turn to Exodus chapter 3, we'll briefly move to chapter 4 as well, but we'll start in Exodus chapter 3. So we are moving in this Life Project Life sermon series a little bit. And in the mornings we're looking at successes, and in the evenings we are looking at failures. This week, we're talking about the plan. Anytime you've got a project, we learned last week, we said you've got to have a plan. What is that plan for you? Whatever that project is that you are about to embark on, whether that is character changing, whether that is simply the next step or the next phase in your life, whether that's a job change or education change, or something of the latter, or maybe it's something just as simple as I've got to start working out. Whatever that project is in your life that you're starting, you've got to have a plan. The story is told of Franklin Roosevelt, who often endured long receiving lines at the White House. He complained that no one really paid any attention to what was said. One day, during a reception, he decided to try an experiment. To each person who passed down the line and shook his hand, he murmured, "I murdered my grandmother this morning." The guests responded with phrases like, "Marvelous, keep up the good work. We are very proud of you. God bless you." It was not till the end of the line, while greeting the ambassador from Bolivia, that his words were actually heard. Nonplussed, the ambassador leaned over and whispered to Franklin Roosevelt, "I'm sure she had it coming." Sometimes we don't hear the plan. Sometimes we don't hear the plan. Today I want us to look at listening for the plan. My wife would tell you that I am awful at listening for the plan. She will go over the plan with me multiple times, but for some reason we'll get to when the plan actually has to be implemented, and I ask her, "What's the plan?" She then huffs, rolls her eyes, and my children begin to laugh because they know what's coming. I don't know whether the story about Franklin Roosevelt is true or not, but it shows reality in your life and in my life, I'm certain. There is some point, there is some time in your life where you have not listened. I have not listened. Do we really listen and take to heart what is said? Sunday after Sunday, many of us come in and listen to a Bible study or a sermon for years. And then when we leave here, do we really know what has been said? Or do we pick and choose the little phrases that are said? What about in our family life? In the magazine Bits and Pieces, it was reported that Charles Swindoll once found himself with too many commitments in too few days. He got nervous and tense about it. He said, "I was snapping at my wife and our children, choking down my food at mealtimes, and feeling irritated at those unexpected interruptions throughout the day." He recalled in his book, Stress Fractures. He said this, "Before long, things around our home started reflecting the pattern of hurry up that I was instilling. I was becoming unbearable. I distinctly remember after supper one evening the words of our youngest daughter, Colleen. She wanted to tell me something important that had happened to her at school that day. She began hurriedly. She said, 'Daddy, I want to tell you something, and I'll tell you really fast.' Suddenly realizing her frustration, I answered, 'Honey, you can tell me. You don't have to be really fast. Say it slowly.' I'll never forget her answer," Swindoll said. She replied, "Then listen slowly." We are constantly going to and fro, hustling and bustling to get the latest items or make more money or watch the right television show. Are we listening when people are talking to us, when God is talking to us? In our projects as we begin, are we simply embarking on journeys that we feel necessary, or are we listening for the plan that God is trying to get us? When God tries to speak to us through His Word, the Holy Spirit guides us. And sometimes the word of encouragement of another believer. Are we listening to those words? Look at Exodus chapter 3. We'll start in verse 19. And I know we're going to kind of come in the middle of this burning bush experience. But look at Moses chapter 3, verse 19. In the NIV, it says this: "But I know that the king of Egypt will not let you go unless a mighty hand compels him." This is God speaking. "So I will stretch out my hand and strike the Egyptians with all the wonders that I will perform among them. After that, he, Pharaoh, will let you go. And I, God, will make the Egyptians favorably disposed toward this people, so that when you leave, you will not go empty-handed. Every woman is to ask her neighbor and any woman living in her house for articles of silver and gold and for clothing, which you will put on your sons and daughters, and so you will plunder the Egyptians." In the burning bush experience, we generally start with, "And Moses saw the bush." But God started a long time ago. God knew the plan, knew what was going to happen, and he started a long time ago. God had a plan to rescue his people. We must listen to the plan that God already has. God knew the plan long before Moses and the Israelites were conquered by the Egyptians. God knew what would happen when the Israelites tried to escape, and he was already acting to thwart the Egyptians' attempts to keep the Israelites captive. God had created a plan and was telling it to Moses. So first of all, when God speaks, we should listen. John Avery and Richard Blackaby in On Mission with God claim that God is always in action. He is moving all around us, and all we have to do is listen. Get on board. God is currently involved in human life. He is actively engaging with us every single day. There are days that we see him more than others. And there are days that we see him clearly, and days that he is clouded. But we should listen because he is speaking. So how do we listen? How do we know he's around us? First of all, we should look for God to speak. Look at Exodus chapter 3, verse 2. Go back to the beginning of the chapter. "There the angel of the Lord appeared to him, Moses, in the flames of fire from within a bush." And here's the look for God action. "Moses saw that though the bush was on fire, it did not burn up." What's Moses doing? Verse 1, it says he was tending the flock. He's at work. He's working. When you guys are involved in a project and you're doing something, are you so involved in that project that you have tunnel vision, that you're not looking around you at what's happening around you? Moses looked. When the bush was on fire, Moses was intrigued and looked at what was going on. He was an investigator, diving deeper into the mystery of the bush. Projects in our lives put us on paths which should cause us to be investigators and cause us to be tentative to the involvement of God in our lives. Yet many times we continue down the path of routine and fail to see anything around us. Our routine order of life is comfortable, well-trodden, safe. There may be bumps, but we've ridden over those same bumps and know if they can cause damage or not. And they're safe bumps. We decide to stay on the routine path because we know the path. Think of it like this. As you learn to drive and you get older and you've driven the exact same route every single day, you forget that particular day's route. You tend to. And it's so ingrained in your head sometimes that you end up going in the wrong direction because you need to go somewhere else. So when I was teaching and coaching at Columbus, on Sunday mornings, there were occasions where we would get in the car and I would go straight instead of turning left at the fire station. Because it's so routine for me to get in the car and drive that direction. Not looking at what's around me, not noticing that there are 3 other people in the car that are talking to me and telling me we should be going to church. I'm still going in the right direction for me. To get off the path means to go to the unknown. Moses was a sheep herder. He had to be on the offensive at all times. If he was not, then a predator could come and kill one of his sheep. It was not out of the ordinary for Moses to look at the mysteries surrounding the flock to ensure their safety. As parents, we do the same thing concerning our children. We try our best to protect them from the evils of the world, yet when it comes to our own lives, we fail to look around us at the mysteries. We fail and we fall into the routine, and we investigate only those things that are so over the top that we can't look away. Not only do we need to look for God speaking to us, we also need to examine God's speech. Look at verse 3, chapter 3, verse 3. So Moses thought, I will go over and see this strange sight, why the bush does not burn up. To me, this is one of those things when you're watching a movie and you're like, do not go in that room. Why are you going upstairs? You know what's going to happen. The murderer is up there, and you know they're up there. Why not just go out the front door and leave? This is that kind of sentiment to me. The bush is not on fire. I'm not going to go investigate that. It's not burning up. Well, that's cool. We must examine what God is saying to us. Moses, however, did pull a no-no for a sheep herder here. He left the flock to see what was going on. Sheep herder 101, don't leave the sheep alone. Moses was so intrigued that he left the flock to continue his investigation. He left the comfortable, known world to see what was going on. I will go over and see this strange sight. Are you intrigued with God to the point of abandoning your comfort in order to find out what's going on? Abandon some of your responsibilities to ensure that God's actions in your life are maintained. Can you imagine how Moses walked toward the bush, tiptoe? Eyes fluttering about, trying to find out who's kind of behind this thing? Was he like Crunk in The Emperor's New Groove and he made his own theme music? Regardless, he was probably a little scared. Whenever we hear God move, whenever we venture off the path into a world yet unknown, we are scared. We can be a little fearful of the outcome, but we have to muster enough courage to get out there. We have to be willing to go a little closer and examine what God is trying to say to us. In our life projects, we can be too fearful. We can hear and know that we are supposed to do something, yet we never get up off the couch to hear what it's all about. We never get a little closer. Moses wanted to know what the adventure was all about, what God was asking him to do. You examine God's word. Thirdly, we must respect God's word. Look at Exodus chapter 3, verses 5 through 6. Do not come any closer, God said. Take off your sandals, for the place where you are standing is holy ground. Then he said, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. At this, Moses hid his face because he was afraid to look at God. Clark Clifford shares this reminiscence of his former boss, Harry S. Truman. He said, every morning at 8:30, the president would have a staff meeting. And one particular day, the mail clerk brought in a lavender envelope with a regal wax seal and a flowing of purple ribbons. Opening, the president found a letter from King Ibn Saud of Saudi Arabia. This is what he said. Your magnificence. Truman repeated out loud, your magnificence. And he laughed and he said, as he looked at his staff members, I like that. I don't know what you guys call me when I'm not here, but it's okay if you refer to me now as your magnificence. Parents and children sometimes have difficulty with this respect issue. Respect is a virtue that is falling away in our society. Many are abandoning the subtleties of chivalry, such as respect. When asked a question, the child might respond with a tense tone that is unneeded nor undeserved. Same from the parent to the child. Respect is something that many are not taught, or are taught but fail to practice. When God speaks to us, we must respect what is said. We must treat every utterance with admiration, dignity, appreciation, and fear. If we don't respect God's word, then we are never going to allow it to penetrate our hearts. We will never implement the words of God in our lives if we do not respect them. We'll never become the men and women He wants us to be. Think of it like this. I've played soccer pretty much my whole life. Zach likes anything that involves a ball. During the soccer season, I will give Zach some advice. Zach, you need to be running over here. Don't get next to the ball, because, at his age, they all are like, ball, and run straight to it. So I give him some advice, and he looks at me and he says, I don't play like that. During baseball season this year, he played first base. And I told him, I said, Zach, if you'll stand on the other side of the bag, the guy won't run over you. And he said, yeah, Dad, but that's not where I stand. Respect. Sometimes we don't respect because we don't believe in where it's coming from. Zach didn't necessarily respect or believe that I knew about soccer or that I knew about baseball. Why? Because I was not his coach. I knew the coach. I knew as much as the coach. Zach didn't believe it. So when God is speaking to you, do you truly believe that God knows enough to be telling the truth, to be guiding you in the right direction? Do you believe in Him enough that what He's saying is true? Moses had not been raised a Jew, thus he did not know the customs necessarily. He knew of them, but he hadn't been raised as a Jew. He had been raised in an Egyptian household. Of course, Jewish influence, as his mother helped raise him. But it is speculated that he was not circumcised. He was not a full-tilt religious Jew. So it is not far-fetched for him to ask the question, who this God is, or why should other people want to follow this God? He knew of Him, but did not necessarily know. However, when God spoke, Moses spoke. In our life projects, when God speaks, we know it. We should also respect it. Secondly, not only should we listen when God speaks, but when God speaks, we should participate. Active listening is a way of listening and responding to another person that improves mutual understanding. As a principal, when I'm trying to get a story out of an individual, I often say, okay, let me repeat back to you what you said to me and clear up anything I might have misconstrued or taken incorrectly. This, of course, is a strategy Lorianne has adopted to me, because she says I speak with phrases. Students come in with some of the craziest stories, but as I have to listen to them all, regardless of the topic, and investigate them, even if they are trivial, I must respond. If a student walks in and tells me, my life is over, and I simply say, okay. How does that make you feel? Or I simply say, I don't have time for that right now. Am I respecting them, number one? Am I examining them? Am I even listening to what they're saying? I may have responded, but I'm not participating. I'm not participating in what they say. If I were to listen but not respond, then it would be extremely weak. But our response is something that matters. They walked into my office and they said, my life is over because... And I just look at them blankly. You and I do that to God all the time, do we not? He's actively involved in our lives and He is engaging us and we get something. Pastor, you participate. Look at verse 11. Chapter 3, verse 11. But Moses said to God, "Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh, bring the Israelites out of Egypt?" Now Moses' response was not the best response. He was not confident in God's plan. It was a little complaining, a little defensive, but it was a response. Clearly Moses had been listening to God. There's little doubt that Moses knew what God wanted him to do. The task at hand would be a difficult task for Moses to pursue. Moses was not entirely out of his comfort zone when he investigated the burning bush, but now he would be moved further. He was a fearless guy that could war with anyone or anything. He was not a guy that could be diplomatic. Words were not his strong point. In fact, when he saw an Egyptian out of line in the treatment of an Israelite, he did not argue or take him to court. He didn't say, "Let's talk about this thing." Instead, he killed him. Now, Moses' response to God is one of two. Moses was actively listening to God. "Let me get this straight. You want me to go to Pharaoh and ask for the release of all the slaves? Are you crazy?" You and I embark upon life-altering projects, we should clearly talk it out with God. Respond when you feel God is talking to you. Respond either through verbal communication or non-verbal communication, but respond. You can't ignore God. He will not go away, as we learned last Sunday evening about Jonah. Nor can you walk away. Last Sunday night, you see, when we encountered Jonah, he ignored God's call on his life and he tried to run away from it. Jonah's decision came at a cost personally to him and to those in the ship. We cannot run from God. Tell God what's going on. Communicate with God your feelings. Open communication is one of the elements of a healthy relationship. Why should it be any different in our relationship with God? Life projects come at us when we least expect it sometimes. We or someone very close to us becomes ill suddenly. We must embark on a life project to deal with the illness. And our countenance toward God may be of anger or resentment, yet we should not abandon our relationship. We decide to stop going to church, stop reading the Word, stop praying. You see, when that occurs, we are running from God. Moses talks to God about his concern. Moses lifts up his thoughts to God when God speaks to him. So too should we. You see, God will call us out of our sin. Garden of Gethsemane, he lifted up and said, "I'm concerned if there is another way." Not only should we participate by responding, we should participate by believing. Look at verse 13. Moses said to God, "Suppose I go to the Israelites, and I say to them, the God of your fathers has sent me to you, and they ask me, what is his name? Then what should I tell them?" Moses first blamed his own inadequacies for not being able to do what God asked. Then he blamed God. Okay, well, if I can't get out of this because I am not good at it, then maybe I can get out of it by throwing it back on God. Who am I to do this? And now he is saying, who are you to do this? In our life projects, we like to find blame for failure, for inadequacy. When life does not go the way we plan it, we place blame. It is someone else's fault. That is just not the case all the time. There are occasions that arise out of circumstances created by someone else's action, but it is never a singular individual's fault. In a car accident, yes, the person who is driving may be at fault. But there are a lot of other circumstances that influence the driver. Alcohol, the passenger may be a distraction. The model drivers that taught them how to drive may not have been the best model drivers. The mechanics of the car might have busted or become faulty. Something ran out into the road and the driver swerved and missed it. You see, the driver is still at fault, but not necessarily completely on his own. You See, when God speaks to us, we must believe that God is saying the truth and leave no room for doubt, no room for hesitation. We must know what God is saying to us and believe it to be true. Jonathan Whitfield was preaching to coal miners in England. He asked one man, "What do you believe?" "Well, I believe the same thing as the church." Jonathan Whitfield said, "And what does the church believe?" "Well, they believe the same as me." Seeing that he was getting nowhere, Whitfield said, "And what is it that you both believe?" The coal miner responded, "Well, I suppose the same thing." We must both know what God is saying and believe it. However, Moses does not believe in what God is asking him to accomplish. So he's trying to wiggle his way out. He is trying to get God to change his mind and pick someone else. Let me tell you, Moses would have missed out the blessing of God had God changed his mind. How awesome was it to be the leader that saved him? How awesome was it to look out over the people and know that you had part in helping them leave slavery? What about being God's hand and feet during the plagues? Or the parting of the Red Sea? Or the pillar of fire? See, God has a plan. God's plan is perfect. Believe what God is trying to tell you. Believe that it will change your life for the better. Believe that Jesus came to us to live life abundantly. Finally, we should participate by obedience. Look at Exodus chapter 4, verse 1. Exodus chapter 4, verse 1. It takes almost a whole other chapter. Moses releases. It says, "So Moses took his wife and sons, put them on a donkey, and started back to Egypt. And he took the staff of God." Ultimately, after all the whining and complaining, Moses accepted his mission and went as God told him. There are lots of hiccups along the way, even one almost immediately as we look down in verse 24. Moses helped alter the course of history of Israel through the obedience. When God is directing us, He can accomplish mighty things. No matter what the project is in your life, if God is in charge, we obey His instructions. Great and mighty. All we have to do is obey. This can be a very difficult thing. It might be hard to uproot our families like Moses. It might be difficult to change jobs or alter our schedules, change the focus of our finances, build relationships with people that are different from us, deal with illness or heartbreak. But we can accomplish anything as long as God is directing us to be obeyed. Many of us don't have difficulty obeying. We are natural-born people pleasers. But others of us have difficulty obeying. We are natural-born rebels. For those rebels, it can be difficult to relinquish control, to relinquish authority in our lives. One mother finally relinquished control one day. You see, every conscientious parent recognizes how difficult it is to exercise his God-given authority over his children. The delicate balance of being tough and tender is not easy to maintain. Many parents intensify a rebellious spirit by being dictatorial and harsh. Others yield when their authority is tested. When a strong-willed child resists the pressure to give in for the sake of peace and harmony, can become overpowering. Reminded of the mother taken out of a baby's diaper. Said, "I am reminded of the mother who wanted to have the last word, but couldn't handle the hassle that resulted whenever she said to the young son, no." After an especially trying day, she finally hung her hands way up in the air and said, "All right, Billy, do whatever you want. Now let me see you disobey that." Here in the middle of the life project, change, obedience, success project. God is at work all around us. God is speaking. Have you looked into what He is trying to say? Have you responded to His call of His voice? And are you awake? Today I ask that you listen to God's direction in your life. Look around you to see where He is involved. Listen to what He's saying exactly